So today we are going to be doing a review of a little tiny atom-sized movie called Heretic. This is the new Hugh Grant film starring Hugh Grant, and it's also got Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, written and directed by Scott Beck, Brian Woods. I'm not too familiar with their stuff. But what is this film about? This film is about these two female Mormons going off two by two, door to door, trying to spread the word and convert people to Mormonism. And they've obviously got a list of people who are, I guess, showing a bit of interest. And so they come to this house at the edge of town. They knock on the door, and who opens the door? It's Mr. Hugh Grant, Mr. Charming. English. He's got the English charm, and he goes, "Oh, come on in." And my wife's got some pie on the oven, and they go, "Good," because we can only come in if there is a woman present. So they go, "Good." The wife's there, so they go in, and basically they have theological debate. Like, it turns out this Hugh Grant character has spent a lot of his life studying religions and is really, really interested in religious discussions and stuff. So the first half of the film is kind of a great sort of back and forth sort of debate about religion and theology and stuff. And then it just takes a slightly more sinister tone, and it turns into more of a horror/thriller in the second half. And I guess that's where I'll leave the synopsis. What did I think of this film? I thought this film was fucking awesome. I love a good theology debate. I love some good sort of debates about religion, discussions about that subject really, really interests me. I really love listening to that kind of stuff, and this film just really is that. I thought Hugh Grant's performance was spectacular. He is just the perfect sort of evil Richard Dawkins. He's got that British sort of charm where you kind of feel safe but also don't trust him. That classic British sort of accent where you kind of do trust but at the same time don't trust them. That's so British, and Hugh Grant does it perfectly. It's probably his best acting I've ever seen because, like I say, he's charming but he's creepy, and he makes really good points. The Mormons, they are really great actresses. They really do the characters separately. So one Mormon is very much like, "Yes, sir." Like, when they realize they're in a bad situation, it's like, "Yes, sir." Like, they try to play that kind of thing. Like, "Oh, thank you for teaching us. So now if we could just leave," that kind of vibe. Whereas the other Mormons more like, "No, we have to stand up for our beliefs. When he attacks our beliefs, we need to stand up." And yeah, great two different types of religious people are tackling this in different ways. I personally am agnostic, which means I don't know if there's a God or not. I feel like everybody technically is agnostic. I probably lean kind of sort of heavily towards the atheist side, in which I've never really been convinced by any religion that there's any kind of God whatsoever. It just doesn't make me convinced. I'm sorry, but the arguments aren't good enough. They don't make me convinced. That being said, I would never properly label myself as an atheist just because I don't know. I don't know. So I do have a sense of something magical maybe out there. There's some questions that just seem like magic seems to be the only answer. So that's all I've got at the moment. So yeah, I guess I just call myself an agnostic. So I do lean heavily sort of atheist. I really appreciate their arguments. So the first half of the film, I'm definitely like, yeah, Hugh Grant's making awesome points about Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, and about can you really trust a guy who had multiple wives? And possibly the only reason that you're allowed to have multiple wives in Mormonism is because he was cheating on his wife, and maybe rules changed because of infidelity and stuff like that. And Hugh Grant lays these points out really well, makes really great comparisons to things like Monopoly and religions copying other religions, and all these things are just really interesting. And like I say, I love religious debate, so I thought I'd go into this and I'd be like, yeah, I've heard that before. That's just religious debate 101. But no, it was done in a really sort of dramatic way, a way that it wasn't like necessarily saying new arguments I've never heard before, but it just, the arguments unfolded in a really satisfyingly dramatic way, and I really, really loved that. The girls, when they kind of stood up for their beliefs and told their side of it, I was also sympathetic to some of their arguments. I actually thought, yeah, that's a really great point. Their arguments really, they really combated Hugh Grant's point. And he's like this really, really clever scholar almost, who's like been searching for the one true religion his whole life. And he's debating against these very young Mormons, but they stand their ground, and they make some really great points. So this film I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm going to say one part of it which I loved. I really, really loved this bit of writing. You might consider this a spoiler, so if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, just go away. Go away. You're not wanted here. But this happens about a third of the way into the film. So, here we go. You've been warned, so it's kind of a little bit of a spoiler. It's not much of a spoiler, but a little bit. So you've been warned. And I love this bit of writing. I think this was ingenious. So the two Mormon girls, they've said from the beginning, we do need to have a woman present here. So if we could meet your wife, that would be really, really good. And Hugh Grant goes, of course, she's making a blueberry pie. Let me go get her. And he comes, and the wife doesn't come with him. And he's got the blueberry. Well, he's got like some drinks and stuff, and some things happen, and a bit later, like 10 minutes later, they go, can we meet your wife? That we would really love to meet her. And he goes, yeah, of course, follow me. And yeah, still, they don't get to meet her. And it's that sense of, these girls know something's off, but they're just being polite. So polite that they're willing to be stuck in a dangerous situation. And that's really relatable to me. Like, I think people really do that. Like, you'd think to yourself, no, of course I would never let being polite be a reason I get myself into danger. But in reality, like, it's so realistic. You're so worried about being impolite that you might just stay in an awkwardly bad situation. So they know, they must know something's off because they're not meeting the wife yet. So they ask again. It's like maybe the fourth or fifth time they go, can we please just see your wife? And he says, and I just think this is genius, he goes, yeah, okay, I'll go into the next room and ask her. But before I do, I just want to ask you one question. Do you still believe that I actually have a wife? And you can see their stomachs drop. And us as the audience member, our stomachs drop. And it's not because we didn't know. We knew, but, we were holding up the facade of being polite. Like, let's all hold up this facade. We think that that's the done thing. But he breaks it. He goes, do you still really believe that I have a wife? And it's such a great line because the whole discussion is about belief. It's all about God. And the point that he's making there is, are you just believing that I have a wife because that makes you feel better? And the thought of me not having a wife and me having lied to you to keep you here is too scary to properly confront. So it's just more comforting to continue to believe I have a wife. That's what he's asking. And that's like religion in a nutshell, right? For a lot of people just think, well, yeah, there's no evidence whatsoever for a God, but the alternative is so scary. The fact that the alternative being like there's just nothing out there, that's so scary that I can't bring myself to admit that that's what's more likely. So it's just more comforting for me to believe in a God, so to speak, or at least pretend like I act as if I believe in a God. It's just more comforting. And that's kind of what he's saying with that line. And I just thought, oh, that's such a juicy line, and it just changes the tone of the film like 1/3 of the way through, and the film then goes down a different direction. It gets scary, it gets creepy, it gets more horrific. And yeah, I just wanted to point that line out. I thought that line was so well written. I think the whole film is really well written. I kind of hope it gets maybe a screenplay nod at the Oscars, maybe Hugh Grant getting an acting nod. I don't know, but I just think excellent, excellent film. I loved it. I thoroughly recommend it. The debate is juicy and delicious. The horror, it gets there. It does get kind of creepy and icky by the end, and you're just like, that was a great, great film. What can I say? What more could I possibly want?